right. Well, welcome everyone to the Spirituality and a Culture of Peace webinar. My name is Rachel Schmidt, and I am the Communications Coordinator at Pax Christi USA. So I would like to introduce you to our presenter today. Her name is Jacqueline Haessly. She's the founder and president of Peacemaking Associates. And she joyfully educates and empowers people to value, imagine, and act to preserve a culture of peace in all the dimensions of their lives, in the family, the community, and our world. Jackie's thought-provoking programs on weaving a culture of peace, imaging peace, spirituality and peace, and respect for diversity, among others, have been presented to audiences on 4 continents. Organizations include the National Conference on Peace and Conflict Studies, Global Education Associates, Pax Christi USA, the Fellowship on Reconciliation, the International Association for Research on Mothering, and the International Institute for Peace Through Tourism. She also serves as a consultant and coach to peace, justice, religious, education, family, community, government, and business organizations. Jackie's published works include Weaving a Culture of Peace, Peacemaking, Family Activities for Justice and Peace, and volumes 1 and 2, and When the Canary Stopped Singing, Women's Perspectives on Transforming Business. Her more recent work has focused on Franciscan values and the art and act of peacemaking. Jackie earned her PhD in interdisciplinary studies with an emphasis on spirituality, peace, and transformational leadership from the Union Institute and University. So welcome everyone. Thank you, Jacqueline, for being here, and I'm going to put myself on mute and let you take it away.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Rachel, and welcome everyone. I am Jacqueline Haessly, and today we will be exploring the topic of spirituality and a culture of peace, and I'd like to begin with a prayer. O God of mercy and compassion, open our hearts to your grace. Help us to understand more deeply your way of peace and nonviolence, to love our enemies, and to do good to those who would harm us. Bless us with courage to embrace nonviolence in our everyday lives. Bless us with vision to seek alternatives when violence appears as the only solution. Encourage us to look deeply at our own complicity in allowing violence to continue in our own hearts and in our world. Bless us with insight to see the roots of violence inherent in our culture. Bless us with the tenacity to stay committed to the struggle to shape a more peaceful, just, and nonviolent world for all of your people. O good and gracious God, source of all life, all creation is charged with your divine energy. Grant us the strength and courage, we pray, for a radical transformation of our own lives and a deeper realization of your kingdom among all of us. Amen. Today we're going to be looking at spirituality in a culture of peace in 3 areas. Peacemaking, exploring the spirituality of peacemaking, understanding cultural paradigms, and acting to promote, protect, and preserve a culture of peace. A culture of peace with justice. Understanding spirituality. We can look at 3 forms of spirituality. We define spirituality in our way of life. Spirituality in the broadest sense defies definition. It refers to whatever is in the human experience that is alive and intentional, conscious of itself and responsive to others. Spirituality touches the total style of life by which we, in our existential situation, move toward wholeness. Spirituality encompasses a way of viewing and living out the meaning of life, a way of living with others, and a way of celebrating life by ourselves and with others. While not using the term spirituality, William Sloane Coffin refers to the similarities between holiness and wholeness, describing them both as the effort to bring into one integrated and dedicated whole the sensual, logical, and ethical aspects of our nature, past, present, and future. I'm going to be looking today at 3 forms of spirituality: personal, communal, and global. We define personal spirituality by looking at people who embrace a personal spirituality. They are the people who affirm their belief in a spiritual presence or spirit God force, who both gives life and gives life meaning. A spirituality that flows from this belief helps people remember that this God who gives each of us being continues to nurture and sustain us throughout our life. We embrace a personal spirituality when we acknowledge our connection to a spiritual being who goes by many names: Allah, Creator, God, the Great Spirit, Guiding Light, Hashim, Holy One, Inner Spirit, Jehovah, Life Giver, Supreme Being, Yahweh, or Higher Power. We practice a personal spirituality by reading and saying private prayers, reading holy books, participating in private devotionals, practicing meditation and mindfulness, keeping a gratitude, forgiveness, and/or affirmation journal, participating in private retreats, all of these and more. A communal spirituality can be defined as not just an inward journey, but also a co-creative journey made in communion with God and with all people of goodwill. Once considered a personal relationship with one's God, an emerging spirituality recognizes that we are all connected, interdependent, and communal. Our spirituality is not only personal, my relationship with my God, but also communal, a spirituality which connects us, each one to the other. We embrace a communal spirituality by building on the recognition that we are all connected. We are connected with others within our family, kinship, and friendship groups, and with those who form our worship community. We are connected with all the people of God, whoever and however they live. And we remember that we are, all of us, God's people, all members of the same human family, all created in the image of love. We practice a communal spirituality when we recognize the value of 2 or 3 or more gathering together for prayer and worship, when we attend religious services with others at a church, mosque, synagogue, temple, community center, or other public place, when we participate in a public retreat, when we engage with others in a community event for religious or spiritual purposes. We practice a global spirituality. What is a global spirituality? Patricia Mishi states that we need for a global spirituality occurs because today we live in a global age, an age of planetary exploration and communication and new global interdependencies. Our spiritual journey, our search for life in God, must be worked out now in a global context, in the midst of global crises and global community. Our spirituality, therefore, must be a global spirituality, one that recognizes that we are all part of one human family. We can define global spirituality as an expansive spirituality, one that includes all of the people who share life and resources with us, all of those people who share life and resources with us in this, our global village. A global spirituality strives to be global in its compassion, in its prayer, and in its action, to be truly inclusive, the whole of God's world, all of its people. to pray, and to act with the inclusive love shown by God. We value a global spirituality when we recognize the sacred in the wisdom and experience of the peoples of all the world's cultures and traditions. When we seek to discover truth, beauty, and goodness in many different spiritual and cultural manifestations. When we value the sacredness of life in all its diverse expressions. And when we celebrate the oneness with all the peoples who inhabit our one earth. We can look at global spirituality from this graphic. We seek to study and learn about faith traditions other than our own. We seek to participate in ecumenical and interfaith religious services, often related to a justice, environmental, or peace theme. Take a look at some of these graphics. The interfaith community welcoming the immigrant, serving people who are hungry or homeless, working on behalf of children, being involved in the interfaith environment movement for eco-justice, standing together on the steps of the hallowed halls of our public offices, our governmental offices, pledging and asking for justice, and when we engage in community actions that support global justice. How then do we connect spirituality to peace? As spiritual people, we are called to be both a sign and a source of peace in our world. Spiritual values lead us to develop a personal, communal, and global spirituality integral to the creation of a culture of peace. And a commitment to peace leads us to minister, to serve, to express our concern for self and others through nonviolent social action. One of the 4 pledges of Pax Christi USA is the pledge to integrate spirituality of nonviolence and peacemaking. The pledge reads, "We are committed to a spirituality of nonviolence and peacemaking because we believe in the gospel call to conversion as found in the Beatitudes." Pope Francis has urged people of all faiths and all spiritual traditions and philosophical beliefs to work together for peace with justice. What, though, is peace? Some claim that peace is the absence of war. They define this as negative peace. Some claim that peace is the absence of violence. They define this as positive peace, which they claim includes the absence of both personal violence and institutional violence. I believe that definition should say what something is, not what it is not. Peace is a presence. Let me repeat that. Peace is a presence. Peace is the presence of just and faithful relationships with ourselves, with each other in the family and the community, between and among all peoples and all nations, with all of creation, and with a spiritual being, wisdom source, higher power, God, source of all goodness, who both gives life and gives life meaning. Let's look at those more carefully. Peace is the presence of justice expressed by how well we, alone and together, nurture just relationships, honor human rights, care for the common good, promote global security, and engage in just actions. What do we mean by this? We support equality, respect, and dignity for women, men, adults, and children, elderly and young. We respect the diversity of peoples of all nations, races, cultures, ethnicities, religions, abilities, sexual orientations, and sexual preferences, as well as people of all states and all nations. We teach both boys and girls, women and men, how to nurture. And we serve together as equals, co-equals, as parents, homemakers, educators, workers, policy planners, business, community, and government leaders. We honor human rights when we develop policies and practices that guarantee the right to life and those things that make life human: water, food, shelter, land, clothing, healthcare. When we develop policies and practices that guarantee respect for human dignity. When we develop policies and practices that guarantee access to education, employment, and freedom of movement. And when we develop policies and practices that guarantee freedom to worship or not according to one's own religious and/or philosophical belief. We support the common good by developing policies that provide care for the social, cultural, economic, political, and environmental needs of all people, both within our local communities and within the national and international arenas. When we develop policies and practices that promote welfare of both the individual and the common good. And when we develop policies and practices that provide care for our entire ecosystem. We promote global security when we educate for global civic literacy, when we engage in networking across multiple diversities to create a more just and peaceful world for all, when we develop societal systems and structures that support human rights and care for the global commons, when we resolve local, national, and international conflicts in peaceful, lawful, just, and mutually agreeable ways, and when we embrace a worldview that affirms our interconnection with each other, with a spiritual being who both gives life, and with the ecosystem that supports all life. And we engage in just actions when we vision just and peaceful relationships in a peaceful world. Let me repeat that. When we vision, when we imagine just and peaceful relationships, when we identify achievable goals that reflect human rights and global security, when we embrace the philosophy, values, strategies, and actions of nonviolence, when we commit to just, peaceful, and nonviolent actions, and when we engage with others to bring about the transformation of personal and communal and global relationships in all of our world. Let's then look next at cultural paradigms. We'll be looking at how we understand cultural paradigms that perpetuate a culture of war, and cultural paradigms that foster and shape a culture of peace. I use the concept of weaving, the warp strands, the personal and public values that give strength and support and ground a culture, and the weft strands. Values ground and strengthen a particular cultural or worldview. Images inspire us with possibilities of a particular cultural or worldview. Language use prepares people to name and to communicate a particular cultural or worldview to others. Systems and structures strengthen and support a particular cultural or worldview. Policies and practices promote and protect a particular cultural or worldview. Education provides the means by which people educate youth and adults across the generations to accept a particular cultural or worldview. And actions lead to the external manifestation of a particular cultural or worldview. Let us then examine these strands in terms of cultural paradigms that perpetuate a militaristic worldview. Our values of warfare include military solutions to intra- and interregional and national disputes, competition for scarce resources, and domination, control, and manipulation of others to gain access to resources or to further one area of rule and domination. The images of warfare include war rooms, soldiers, tanks, guns, bombs, generals and soldiers, suicide bombers, missiles exploding in the night, bodies tortured and torn, civilians wounded and dead, caregivers tending to the wounded and dead, destroyed cities and countrysides, weeping women, disoriented elders, and lost and orphaned children wandering about aimlessly in desolate deserts and fields. The language of warfare is that of enemy, collateral damage, body count, patriotism being number one, and war heroes. And its terminology now permeates all dimensions of everyday human communication, including our communication in such diverse fields as sports, education, psychology, business, politics, religion, and even in family life. The systems of warfare are competitive, undemocratic, domineering, and authoritarian. And the structures reveal the interlocking of a massive military, industrial, scientific, technological, and medical education complex that spans the planet and expands into the universe system itself. The policies of warfare are those of aggressive retaliation, aimed at weakening the one called enemy, tax incentives and subsidies for military development, limitations on freedom of assembly, constrictions on movement, restrictions on a free press, and the growing militarization at all levels and segments of a culture. Educational practices and processes are based on obedience, authoritarianism, domination, control, and on a selective interpretation, misinterpretation, and even misrepresentation of historical and current events, rather than on cooperation, engaged interaction, critical thinking, and a consensus model of decision-making. And the actions of warfare are directed toward war-making in government offices, financial institutions, factories, the media, movies, and even within the hallowed halls of our religious, education, and community-based organizations, some of these, and in our homes. I want you to take a look at these images, which are ever so graphic. These images were taken from an ordinary web search, Google, images of war, and these are the kinds of images that come up when one searches for images of war. Keep this slide in mind as we move forward. Exploring and imaging our cultural paradigms for a culture of peace with justice. How do we value, promote, protect, and preserve a culture of peace with justice? We look first at personal values: spirituality, integrity, honesty, hospitality, compassion, forgiveness, gratitude, cooperation, generosity, and that's only a few. We can look at public values: a global spirituality, ecological integrity, social responsibility, economic equability, political participation, kinship, conflict resolution, global security, and celebration. When one does a search for images of peace, this is what comes up. People joined in hands, peace birds, peace signs, the earth with peace. Think about what it might mean if we had very graphic images of peace with which to promote and sustain a culture of peace. What are some images of peace? Imagine people loving passionately, nurturing others tenderly, listening attentively, caring compassionately, playing together joyfully, laughing exuberantly, working together fairly, acting mindfully, and living justly with all peoples of all ages, races, cultures, for our personal and the common good. Let us think of our language, which helps us both name and claim our nurturing domestic, work, and community-related activities, our everyday activities as peace acts, language for peace, that names our peace heroes and not just our sports and military and entertainment heroes, that gives active expression to peace images, that gives voice for the hope for a just and peaceful world, and yes, avoids the gratuitous use of military terms in our everyday and our professional life. Words like trigger and capture, words like weapon. Let us instead find life-affirming words like generate and stimulate. Let's look at our systems and structures that can help maintain local, state, and national systems and structures needed for effective governing of our government, education, science, law, medicine, all that can support local, national, and international needs for peace and the common good. Let us establish policies and practices and monitor them and enforce them that can help promote a culture of peace within our families, our communities, and our world. Let us establish and promote and develop and work through educational policies, practices, and educational environments, educational theory, educational processes that lead to an understanding of the causes and effects of war, and that promote education both about and for peace through affirmation, respect, cooperation, and the skill-building activities of critical thinking and consensus model of decision-making. And let us act for peace in ways that all of the activities of our daily life are recognized as peace acts. How do we understand our actions that promote and protect a culture of peace? I'd like to just take a look for a minute at how we can reimagine some of our activities, all of the actions of our daily lives as peace activities. In all of the places, in our families and in the wider community, where we live, work, study, play, serve, and worship, in our personal, civic, and corporate dimensions of our lives, and in our global community. Our friendship activities of play and courtship, the fun, sports, the ways that we interact with others as friends. In our parenting activities, the feeding and nurturing and care of our young, the teaching them of responsibility, the sharing of home tasks. In our domestic activities, the baking and cooking and cleaning and maintenance, shared by both women and men, boys and girls. The education activities, where we study alone or with others, where we are involved in education through self-study or through interaction with others. The recreation activities of our lives, the play, the exploration, the refurbishing of the earth, the care for the environment, that which nurtures our soul. Have we named those as peace activities lately? The cultural activities of our lives, the music and the dance and the theater, and the ways that we interact with others and appreciate the arts. Have we named those as peace acts? The community-sustaining activities, the agriculture, the education, the transportation, the factories, the businesses, the financial institutions, the ways that we engage with each other through our places of work. Our civic building activities, being informed, being of public service, meeting together to share in the decision-making processes that affect all of our lives. The earth-keeping activities.
It's 12:30.
All of that which helps us care for the environment and all living things. and the spiritual nurturing activities, whether we play in a church or a mosque or a synagogue, or find our spirituality nurtured in the environment. How many of these have we named as peacemaking activities in the past day, the past week, the past month, the past year? Peace is possible when we name our daily activities as peacemaking activities, and when we work together to create a world where everyone's needs are respected and valued. Done with care, each of our actions can help shape a culture of peace with justice. I'd like to turn now to identifying 7 forms of nonviolent personal and community action. We'll be looking at each of these a little bit more in depth. And I'd like us to begin by rethinking a familiar adage. Give someone a fish, they eat for a day. Teach them to fish, they can eat for a lifetime. I want to expand that adage. Let us begin by praying for fish, giving thanks alone and with others for fish received. Direct service is that concept of giving someone a fish so they eat for a day, or a fishing pole, or both. Advocacy takes it another level. We can advocate for access to clean lakes and streams and rivers, advocate for the right to fish. Empowerment. We can teach others to fish so they can eat for a lifetime. We can also teach others how to advocate for their right to fish. We can care for creation, work to assure access to those rivers, lakes, and streams, work to assure that children in our homes and in our schools and in our community centers, our hospitals, where children everywhere, where adults everywhere have access to clean drinking water, clean water with which to bathe. And we can stand in solidarity with others, with those who when fishing rights are threatened, even to the point of civil disobedience. And we can celebrate. We can celebrate fish caught. We can celebrate community, and we can celebrate effort. Let's go back to those 4 initiatives of Pax Christi. Spirituality of nonviolence and peacemaking, disarmament, demilitarization, and reconciliation, economic and interracial justice in the United States, and human rights and global restoration. How might these 4 initiatives look if we examine them through the lens of those 7 forms of social action? I'd like to talk a little bit about how our parish in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, St. Benedict the Moor, a Capuchin parish with a strong Pax Christi group, does its ministry for social justice and nonviolent community action. St. Francis says, preach the gospel always, and if necessary, use words. I'm looking at slides we're using the artwork of John August Swanson and the book of Dennis on St. Francis. At St. Ben's, we gather to pray alone, as well as with others through our Sunday Masses, but also through our other prayer services throughout the year, sometimes throughout the week. We praise God, we give thanks to God. Our prayers of the faithful are now known to go on for quite a long time as we express in various ways our concerns for human justice, for the poor, the disenfranchised, the neglected, for victims of war. During the past few years, several members of our parish have taken it upon themselves to make explicit prayers for our current president and government officials, that their hearts may be open to meet the needs of all people in a welcoming and caring community. And some of us have been praying for those charged with looking at the ongoing investigations for their own personal safety, and for that they may be led by the Spirit to do what is right, and for members of the media, the press, for their safety in these very trying times. At St. Ben's, both our Pax Christi group and the parish as a whole are engaged in providing service to the needy. We have a meal program that feeds the hungry 6 mornings a week through the gathering, and a meal program that serves the hungry 6 evenings a week through the St. Ben's Community Meal Program. We had a hospital attached to our Capuchin parish called St. Anthony's Hospital that closed decades ago. When it reopened, it was as a correctional facility for our county. When that closed, creative minds thought, what else could we use this building with Capuchin roots? And it is now St. Anthony's Apartments, which is used to shelter the formerly homeless. It also provides social services to meet their needs, and there's a health care clinic for the sick. We have a strong process of collecting clothing, especially winter jackets and boots and shoes for the formerly and currently homeless. We have a strong ministry program for in jail, and we have a very strong program for tutoring both young and adults. During a recent Pax Christi all-church Lenten program, education program, one of our participants mentioned that most parishes have a social justice ministry or committee, and that St. Ben's does not need such a committee, not because there isn't a need, but because we, the parish, are that social justice committee. And much of our service, our community service through Pax Christi, is through providing service to the needy, but not all. We also advocate for the needs of others. We speak up for others. We write letters to the media. We're involved in religious government and community leaders through meetings with them and through writing them. And we attend legislative sessions, both locally and in Madison, and occasionally nationally, advocating for justice for the poor. We have a strong commitment right now working for car licenses to be issued to all, including those who are undocumented immigrants. We empower others to act. We help them to believe in themselves. We support their efforts. We educate them. We teach them new skills. And we particularly work to help people to take action to meet their own needs. One of the programs currently taking place at our parish is a program that welcomes back the formerly incarcerated, but it is the members of the formerly incarcerated group who are the leaders of that group and who are taking action in other ways. We stand in solidarity with others. We stand with those in need, and we stand with those whose lives have been threatened, and we stand together to protect the ecosystem. We accept both the risks and consequences of our actions when we stand in solidarity with others. A spirit of solidarity is dependent upon a commitment to others that is expressed through nonviolent, peace-filled social action, such as the wearing of armbands, sitting peacefully at lunch counters, or standing with others in places of risk. Solidarity means more than just appealing for justice for another. It means standing with another, placing oneself, as the Danish people did, in the shoes of the other, ready to assume the physical and emotional risks, as well as the legal and social consequences of their actions. Physical risks occur when bodily force, mace, dogs, knives, or guns are used against us. Emotional risks occur from our uncertainty regarding the outcome of our actions or the uncertainty of responses from friends and family. Legal consequences may include arrest and imprisonment. Social consequences may include misunderstandings and may even lead to broken relationships between family and friends. People at St. Ben's have been involved in nonviolent social action for many, many years in a variety of ways, some as witness and some through nonviolent civil disobedience. Some dating back as far back as the Milwaukee 14, protesting the Vietnam War, and as recently as standing at the border with School of Americas. And they have been doing this for probably 20 or 25 years. We're called to care for creation. And we have a number of people in our parish who are involved in 350 organization and in our interfaith Protect the Ecosystem organization, as well as other local groups, Clean the Rivers and such. We're very involved in celebrations. We have people who write music and song, and we celebrate the accomplishments of others through our community celebrations. We commemorate the effort. We express every emotion, every affection, every desire. We give praise for all of creation. People with vision and a commitment can change the world. Pope Francis traveled to Azerbaijan several years ago, and on the trip back, he was asked, "What must people do?" And he said, "What must people do? We pray for each other. This is important, to pray. But secondly, we must do things together. Are there poor? We work with them together, with the poor, for the poor. There is this problem and that problem. We can do it together. And as we do it together, we help build a more just world. Are there immigrants, migrants? We do things together. We do things, good things for others together. We can do this. We begin by walking together. And with goodwill, we can do this. You must do this. Today, ecumenism is to be done by walking together, praying for each other, and doing things together. Everywhere, on all continents, a growing number of women and men recognize the need to work together to create a just and peaceful society, one where participation in decision-making that affects one's life in the home, the workplace, and the world is full and equal, where values of mutuality, responsibility, compassion, consensus, cooperation, inclusion, reciprocity, interdependence, and openness to the ideas and experiences of others are treasured, and where human rights, affirmation for the common good, a commitment to global security, and engagement in just actions, and full human liberation for all are espoused and practiced. I'd like to end with a prayer. This is a prayer for global prayer for the sacred community. Let us pray. O blessed source, eternal Lord of creation, sustainer of all worlds, you embrace the whole cosmos within yourself, for everything exists in you. Let your winds come and breathe your everlasting spirit in us. Let us inhale your divine spirit and be inspired. Enlighten us in your truth. Pour your grace into our hearts. Wipe away our sin and all negativity. Transform us into your love, and let us radiate that love to all others. Inflame us with your unending life. Dissolve our limited way of being. Elevate us into your divine life. Give us your capacity to share that life with everyone. Shape us in your wisdom. Grant us your joy and laughter. Let us become the divine wisdom, sensitivity, laughter, and joy for all beings. Let us fully realize that we are all members of that sacred community with all humankind, with all other species, with all of nature, and with the entire cosmos. Grant us a heart that can embrace them all in you. Let us be in communion with you forever in the bliss of that love, the love that sustains all and transforms all into your divine radiance. We ask this in the name of our God, who goes by many names. Amen.
Amen.
There's a resource list that will be made available to you, and now we will take comments and questions.
Thank you so much, Jacqueline, for your presentation. I really appreciated what you had to say about peace as a lens, and being able to look at all different places in life and culture for where we can embrace our spirituality of nonviolence. And I really appreciated the fish analogy. I really like analogies that helps me learn, and really like how you extended the fish analogy. So let's see what questions there are. Okay, Chris asks, does the parish provide any financial support for these ministries, and how involved are the clergy, deacons, and priests?
Thank you for that question, Chris. At St. Ben's, it's a Capuchin parish, and the priests and the deacon and most all of the parish members range from newborns to people in their 90s are involved in multiple ways in these various ministries. The parish has a twin parish, which is called St. Francis of Assisi, and the pastor is shared among the two parishes. And we sometimes do joint ministries, joint worship services, but occasionally joint service for some of these ministries. For example, the St. Francis has a far more diverse parish than we do. A third of their population is African American, probably a little over, well, not quite, not half, about half are Puerto Rican, and then professional European Americans make up that parish. And then there are a smattering of the older German membership from decades ago who are still members of that parish. And then there are people who come from outside the parish boundaries to worship at both our parishes. And so, for example, there was this big event to raise awareness and funds for the people of Puerto Rico after the hurricanes of the last 2 years. And all of us are involved there. We do a program every year for Youth Haiti, and people from both parishes are involved in that. And then we also have an active St. Vincent de Paul community at both parishes. So there are ways that we share together, and as I say, the clergy and priests are involved in both of these at our parish.
Very nice. Here's a good question. Can you talk about the history of your parish, how it got to be so life-affirming? Are there no dissenters? My own parish is diverse in every way and will not act in unison.
Our parish has a very unique beginning. It started in 1908 when 3 lay people came up and moved to the area from Chicago. They were African American, and they were not allowed to worship as regular parishioners at some of the local Catholic churches. A few places banned them, and the largest Catholic parish at the time, Jesuit parish, assigned them to seats in the choir balcony. They went to the local Capuchin priest and said, could we have a parish? And they started with a storefront. I think a few years later, they moved to the location where we are now. And then they had a school. There was a boarding school, St. Benedict the Moor Boarding School, which provided K-12 education for students not only in the Metro Milwaukee area, but from around the country, African American students whose parents wanted them to have a quality education. The school closed in the mid-1960s as a result of freeways that went through. We needed Jane Jacobs at that time, but we didn't have a Jane Jacobs in Milwaukee. Do some research on Jane Jacobs. Citizen Jane is her movie from Manhattan and what she did to stop freeways from tearing apart urban areas in Manhattan. The parish almost closed 3 or 4 times because membership was dwindling after the freeway was closed. And Mike and Nettie Cullen, who founded the Casa Maria House of Hospitality in Milwaukee, Catholic worker, asked if we could provide a location for their growing meal program. And Father Alexis Luigi, 45 years ago, said yes. So the church hall, which was destined to be shut down, torn down, became the site for the meal hall. And then the people who served the meals said, why don't we come together for prayer? And then why don't we come together for a Mass? And Alex opened for a Catholic Mass on Sunday mornings. And so slowly and steadily it has built up. My husband and I joined in 1979, but we worshiped there on occasion from 73 until 79. The membership has changed rather dramatically over those years. There are probably only a few people who were part of the parish back in 79 who are still members, partly because of age, partly because of death, and partly because of what somebody said, we're not willing to support this issue. We had a strong sanctuary movement back in the mid-80s for refugees from Central America, and that did not set well with some parishioners. We have had openly gay and lesbian parish members for decades. Back in the early 80s, we had a gay two men who adopted a 5-year-old child. The men both had AIDS, as did the little girl, and no social service agency could find a placement for the little girl. And they took her and raised her as their own until she died of AIDS, and then they died some years later. So we have had our parish has had a very open, welcoming place. And yes, people have left because of some of our positions on social justice. At the same time, almost every week we have visitors from various parishes and people from outside the Milwaukee area, and many of them join because we're a small parish. We're probably 150, probably not even 150 families, but for that 150, we're incredibly active in a variety of social justice. Sometimes people say, gee, do I dare ask for one more thing? And we ask and people show up. We had a man who died just this past week who was in his 90s, and my last conversation with him about 3-4 weeks ago before he was hospitalized was, would he be willing to help organize a James Walk project to help close the secure detention center, which is right next door to our parish. And he said, I can't walk anymore, but I will help organize. And so we partner with many other parishes, people of other faith communities, and people of other secular organizations to do work in good ways.
Okay. Next question. Is the webinar available to share with our Pax Christi group? I can answer that. Yes, we'll have the recording available either the end of today, but I'm leaving on vacation tomorrow, so either the end of today or when I get back after Easter, so maybe a week and a half before we have that available. And then one comment here, from Heidi. Thank you so much for your presentation. I'm a teacher, and this gives me many ideas for trying to develop a culture of peace at our school. I also really enjoyed the teach a person to fish slide. Very rich. Good feedback.
Thank you.
And any other questions? We have 5 minutes here.
Maybe I could just promote a couple of the books. Peacemaking Family Activities for Justice and Peace first came out as a Paulus Press publication in 1980 and has been revised a number of times. When it was first published, it had 80 pages. It's now 2 volumes, and volume 1 is from 6 chapters, now 8 chapters, and is 170 some pages. And volume 2 is more than 100 activities related to, about 10 to 15 activities for each of the 8 chapters. It's about 250 pages. A lot of schools are using this. A lot of church organizations are using it, of all faith traditions. One of my joys was to attend a professional meeting on bringing peace education to the schools, and I happened to have a copy of my book with me. And one of the other people at the event said, "Oh my gosh, I've been using your book for years," in one of the other revisions of it, earlier revision of it. And he, for some reason, didn't realize I was from Milwaukee. So yes, it's been used internationally, and it's available. There's a slide. I'll post that. There's another book called Weaving a Culture of Peace. Well, let me back up. For Peacemaking Family Activities for Justice and Peace, some of this information is in that book. And then in Weaving a Culture of Peace, a lot of the more theological and theoretical aspects of peace are developed in there, including a pretty expansive explanation of what it means to weave a culture of peace using those 7 strands, so that we're not just thinking of peace as absence, but thinking of it as presence, and then also thinking of it as how do we integrate all of the ways that we can be involved in peacemaking. I see a question from somebody about how do we increase parish-wide support for social justice issues. Use my books, invite me or someone that you know to come and do a presentation. In our parish, these issues are addressed in homilies, both by the pastor and had been also presented by parishioners. Our pastor is relatively new, and we're still working slowly with him. Even though he's a Capuchin, we don't follow all of the dictates of our diocesan bishop, but we practice a lot of them. For example, we openly welcome gay and lesbians, and that's not true. I shouldn't say it's frowned upon in our church, but it's not quite acceptable in the same way that we welcome them. So one of the things we're working slowly to get him to recognize is that we as women can give homilies. And that's the next one will be on the 28th, so we're looking forward to that. And thank you for your affirmation of the presentation. We have a half a minute. Let me move forward here. Resources. This is how you can get in contact with me. Our address is down below, and our phone number, and that'll be on the slides after Rachel gets them up. And then this is Pax Christi, how to reach Pax Christi and get more information from them. And thank you, everybody, for your attentiveness. And as I say, you can reach me through our website.
All right, thank you so much, and I hope everyone enjoys the resources, and stay tuned for the recording so that you can share it with friends and your Pax Christi groups and your
It's 1 o'clock.
And
I have a cuckoo clock.
the cuckoo clock is saying it's 2 p.m. Eastern. So we are done with this presentation, and if you need to get in touch with us, go to paxchristiusa.org. Thank you so much. Take care.